My name is Marcus Davis, and this is my account. If you are reading this, know that I am already dead, or worse. I don't know what happened to my crew. I'm not even sure if I'm still human. I'm trapped on this cursed planet where the sky looks like shattered glass and the stars resemble decaying open eyes. This place should not exist. It all began 3 weeks ago, when our ship, the EOS, was pulled into a gravitational anomaly while mapping a remote sector of the galaxy. I remember the absolute terror on the faces of the other crew members as the systems failed one by one. The alarms blared like distorted screams, echoing through the metallic hull. We desperately tried to correct our trajectory, but it was too late. We were sucked into a vortex of black light, spiraling faster and faster until everything turned white. When I regained consciousness, I was lying on an arid, cracked terrain covered with a thin layer of glowing dust that emitted a faint blue glow. The air smelled of ozone and something else, something metallic and alive. I staggered to my feet, calling out for the other crew members, but there was no response. Only silence. A silence so complete it felt like pressure against my ears. Then, I saw them. In the distance, impossible structures rose into the sky. Twisted towers that looked as though they were made of interwoven bones stretched up until they disappeared into the dense, pulsating clouds above. Their shapes hurt my eyes if I stared at them for too long, as if they defied the very laws of geometry. Between them there was movement, elongated shadows dancing under a light that seemed to come from nowhere. I started walking toward the towers, with no other option but to press forward. The ground beneath my feet was uneven, almost organic, as if it were breathing slowly. At one point, I noticed markings on the ground, symbols carved into the stone that seemed to shift in shape as I approached. Some were perfect circles, others intricate fractal patterns branching infinitely. I touched one with the tip of my boot and felt a strange tingling sensation crawl up my leg. It was as if those marks were alive, watching me. That's when I heard the first voice, not with my ears, but inside my head. It was a low whisper, almost inaudible, repeating words I couldn't understand. It sounded like an ancient language, guttural and melodic at the same time. I tried to ignore it, but it grew louder, more insistent. "You do not belong here," the voice said. "But now you are part of it." I looked around, searching for the source, but there was no one. Fear began to take hold of me, but I kept walking. I needed answers. Hours later, or perhaps days. Time. Here seemed fluid. I finally saw something that froze me in place. A human figure emerged from the shadows between the towers. At first, I thought it might be a survivor from the EOS. But as it drew closer, I realized something was deeply wrong. Its skin glowed with a radioactive green hue, and its size. God. Its eyes were completely black, like empty voids sucking in all the light around them. He, or she, wore tattered clothes that looked like stitched-together flesh, and their mouth moved constantly, muttering prayers in a language I couldn't comprehend. When the creature finally spoke, its voice was a dissonant chorus, as if multiple people were speaking through it at once. "You came from the stars," it said, tilting its head at an impossible angle. "But the stars are dead, and we worship them." Before I could respond, more figures emerged from the shadows. They were all the same. Humans transformed into something different. Their forms flickered between recognizable and grotesque, as if they were made of unstable matter. Some had too many arms, others had multiple mouths opening simultaneously. One had a second head sprouting from its back, its eyes blinking in sync with those of the main face. They surrounded me but did not touch me. Instead, they began to sing. It was a hypnotic sound that made my body tremble involuntarily. The words were incomprehensible, but they carried a weight that echoed deep within my soul. Then one of them extended a hand and pointed to the sky. I looked up and saw what the stars truly were. They weren't real stars. They were celestial corpses, remnants of ancient cosmic deities that had died and left scars on the fabric of the universe. Their forms were vague, but I could feel their presence. A nauseating sensation of being watched by something infinitely larger and older than anything I could imagine. "They chose us," said the leader of the group, with a smile that revealed rows of teeth too sharp to be human. "They gave us power, and now you will also be blessed." Before I could react, they grabbed me. My hands were bound with ropes made of human tendons, and I was dragged toward the towers. I screamed, pleaded for mercy, but my words felt useless against the incessant chorus of their voices. The last thing I saw before being pulled into the shadows was the sky splitting open, revealing something massive and amorphous hovering above us. I'm writing this as I await the inevitable. I know I won't escape. Whatever these creatures plan to do with me, I know it's only the beginning. If you're hearing this, don't come after me. The darkness inside the tower was absolute, but not an ordinary kind of darkness. It was something active, pulsating, as if it were alive and breathing around me. My hands were still bound with those ropes made of human tendons, or perhaps something else, for they seemed to tighten further every time I tried to move. My breath echoed loudly in the confined space, though the sound felt muffled, as if the walls absorbed any noise I made. "You can feel it, can't you?" The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was the leader of the semi-gods, Thean with black eyes and a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. He was there, invisible, yet his presence was suffocating. "The void is watching you," I wanted to scream, resist, do something to escape. But all I could manage was incoherent babbling as reality began to crumble around me. The walls of the tower seemed to melt, transforming into pulsating flesh that emitted a rust-red glow. Thick veins ran through them, throbbing in irregular rhythms, reminiscent of heartbeats. And then it hit me. This tower wasn't a structure. It was a living being. They forced me to kneel in front of a central structure that resembled an altar. It wasn't made of stone or metal. It was composed of interwoven bones, some so large they could only belong to impossible creatures. Atop the altar sat a black crystal, larger than my head, radiating a pale light that hurt my eyes. It seemed connected directly to the dead stars outside, like a conduit for the cosmic horror looming over us. One of the semi-gods, whose form had degenerated so much it barely looked human anymore, approached with a knife made of volcanic glass. Its face was a melted mask, with multiple whispering mouths muttering incomprehensible prayers. It cut open my right sleeve, exposing my bare skin. That's when I felt it for the first time. An unbearable heat emanating from the crystal, as if it were calling something within me. "You will understand," said the leader, now visible again, but different. His form flickered between human and something utterly alien. His hands had elongated, with impossibly thin fingers ending in sharp claws. His black eyes seemed larger than before, like infinite pits swallowing all light. "The dead stars chose us because we are fragments of them, and now you will become part of it." Before I could react, they pressed my right hand against the crystal. Excruciating pain surged through my arm, as if every nerve were being ripped out and replaced by something other. I screamed until my voice gave out. But the sensation wasn't just physical, it was mental. Memories that weren't mine began flooding my mind. Visions of devastated worlds, extinct civilizations, and forms of life that should never have existed. I saw colossal creatures emerging from the stars, their bodies made of living shadows, consuming entire planets in seconds. But the worst part was when I began to feel presences, not here in this world, but somewhere beyond it. Vast, unspeakable entities observing through me. They laughed, a low, guttural sound that echoed deep within my soul. I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that these entities were the true sources of the radiation transforming the humans on this planet into monsters. My body began to change almost immediately. My skin took on a bluish-green hue, and small threads of energy seemed to dance beneath it like living circuits. My eyes burned, and when I finally looked at my hands, I saw that my veins glowed with an inner light. It was as if I were being rebuilt cell by cell, becoming something new, something terrible. As my transformation continued, the semi-gods began to chant again. This time, their voices were louder, more urgent, as if summoning something. The black crystal started vibrating, emitting a deep hum that made me bones shake. Then it happened. A fissure appeared in the air above the altar, tearing through reality like wet paper. Through the fissure, I saw something I will never forget. something that haunts me even as I write this. It was a colossal figure, vaguely anthropomorphic but made of shadows and inverted light. Its face was a tangle of twisted tentacles, each ending in eyes blinking in random patterns. Its hands, if they could even be called that, were long, thin claws capable of crushing mountains effortlessly. And its body, God, its body seemed infinite, extending beyond the fissure into dimensions my mind couldn't comprehend. "It is Nictail," whispered the leader, his voice filled with reverence. "The world devourer." Nictail didn't move, but its presence alone was enough to paralyze any living being. Its power radiated from the fissure, compressing the air around us. The semi-gods fell to their knees, prostrating themselves before the entity. Some began to cry, others screamed hysterically, but all shared the same expression of religious ecstasy. That's when Nictail spoke, or rather, thought. Its words centered my mind directly, enveloping it in suffocating darkness. "You Arami children," the voice said, deep and resonant, like distant thunder. Fragments of me scattered across the cosmos. "You have been touched by the radiation of the dead stars, and through it, I will be reborn." Everything became clear in that moment. This planet was nothing more than a nursery for Nictail. Every human transformed into a semi-god was a piece of him, an extension of his consciousness. And now, with the black crystal as a catalyst, he was about to return to the physical world, using me as the final link needed to complete his ascension. The semi-gods began chanting frantically, raising their arms toward the fissure. The black crystal shone so brightly I could barely see. My transformation was nearly complete. My vision expanded to include spectra of light previously invisible, and my hearing picked up sounds that didn't originate from this world. I could feel Nictail calling to me, inviting me to merge with him. But there was something else, something resisting the fusion, a fragment of who I used to be, a spark of humanity still trapped inside me. For the first time since arriving on this planet, I felt fear not just for myself, but for the entire universe. If Nictail returned, he would consume everything. There would be no survivors. I tried to resist, but my body no longer obeyed my commands. My hands rose involuntarily, joining those of the other semi-gods. The energy emanating from the crystal began, flowing into me, connecting me directly to the entity. "No," I murmured, my voice weak and trembling. "Please." The weight of the energy flowing through me was unbearable. Every cell in my body felt as though it were being torn apart and recreated simultaneously, like a corpse being stitched back to life by invisible, cruel hands. My skin glowed with an intense blue-green light, pulsating in sync with the black crystal. I felt connected to something vast and ancient, something without form, yet present everywhere. "You are chosen," Nictail whispered within my mind. "You will be the final link." The semi-gods around me began to merge with the tower, their bodies melting into viscous liquid that flowed through the pulsating veins in the walls. They were being absorbed by the structure itself, which now seemed to grow, expanding to fill the space around us. Their voices echoed in dissonant harmony, forming a chant that shook the very fabric of reality. I tried to resist, but my body no longer belonged to me. My legs gave out, and I collapsed to my knees on the floor, which was now warm and pulsing beneath my hands. The sensation was nauseating, like touching raw, bloody flesh. Everything around me vibrated with an energy that made my bones tremble. It was as if the entire planet were alive and hungry. The fissure above the altar began to expand, swallowing chunks of the tower's ceiling. The colossal entity, Nictail, started to emerge slowly, its amorphous form invading our dimension. Its twisted tentacles slid through the air, leaving trails of darkness behind them. The sound they emitted was deafening, a mix of distorted human screams and piercing metallic screeches that cut through my nerves like knives. Each time one of the tentacles touched the ground, it left smoking black marks that spread rapidly, consuming everything in their path. The walls of the tower began to crumble, revealing the night sky above, or rather, what remained of it. The dead stars seemed closer now, like decaying open eyes watching with malicious curiosity as Nictail returned. to the physical world. "He is here," murmured the leader of the semi-gods, his voice filled with reverence and terror. He could barely stand, his form completely degenerated. His skin was covered in oozing eyes that blinked incessantly, and his hands had transformed into long, thin claws. "He is truly here." I felt something pulling inside me, an irresistible force dragging me toward the altar. My muscles contracted involuntarily, lifting me off the ground and forcing me to walk toward the black crystal. When I touched it again, a searing pain shot through my body, and a torrent of images flooded my mind. I saw entire worlds being destroyed, civilizations reduced to dust by Nyctael. I witnessed colossal creatures fighting against him, only to be consumed by his infinite jaws. And then I saw the truth. Nyctael was not just an entity, he was everything. A fragment of his consciousness existed in every particle of the universe, patiently waiting for the right moment to reconnect and restore his original form. And I was the final link, the catalyst that would allow his complete ascension. Despite the inevitable connection, something inside me still resisted. A small spark of humanity fought against the fusion, refusing to vanish completely. I could feel my identity dissolving, but flashes of who I once was remained. Marcus Davis, the lost astronaut, the man who loved black coffee and classical music, someone who never imagined ending up like this. "No," I murmured, trying to fight back against Nyctael's influence. But my words came out as an inaudible whisper, swallowed by the deafening chant of the semi-gods. Then, something strange happened. For a brief moment, I felt another presence in my mind, something that didn't belong to Nyctael or the semi-gods. It was weak and distant but carried a sense of familiarity. It was as if it was the crew of the Eos. I suddenly remembered them, the faces of the other crew members, the shared laughter during long hours in space, the conversations about a future that would never come. They weren't dead, I realized. They had also been captured by the semi-gods and transformed into parts of Nyctael. Their minds still existed, fragments of consciousness trapped within the entity. "Marcus." I heard Sarah's voice, our chief scientist, echoing directly in my head. "Resist. Don't let him take you completely." "It's too late," I responded mentally, knowing she could hear me. "He's already here." "No," said another voice. Jake, the engineer. "There's a way to stop him. But you have to choose." As the energy continued to flow through me, I began to understand what they meant. Nyctael was powerful, but his connection to this plane depended on intermediaries, beings like the semi-gods, and now, me. If he could sever that connection, perhaps I could prevent his full ascension. But there was a price. "You must destroy yourself," Sarah said, her voice sad but firm. "Sacrifice yourself to seal the fissure. It's the only way." "I can't do it," I thought, desperate. "I'm almost gone." "You can still do this," Jake insisted. "Use what's left of you. Use your humanity." Nyctael sensed my hesitation. His presence in my mind became more oppressive, pressing down on me with false memories and empty promises. He showed me visions of unlimited power, of an eternal existence as part of him. But I knew these were lies, traps to keep me connected. I looked down and saw my trembling hands. They glowed with intense light, but they were still mine. There was still a chance. Closing my eyes, I focused on what remained of me, on my love for Earth, on the simple moments I'd lived before all of this, on the memories of the people I had lost, and finally on the desire to protect those who were still alive. With a guttural scream, I channeled all the energy flowing through me back into the black crystal. It began to shine with unbearable intensity, emitting a deep hum that shook the entire tower. The semi-gods screamed in unison, collapsing to the ground as their forms began to disintegrate. The fissure above the altar started to close, pulling Nyctael back into the void. He roared in anger, his tentacles lashing violently as he tried to remain in this plane. But it was too late. "You cannot stop me." His voice echoed in my mind, filled with hatred and frustration. "I am eternal." "Not here," I replied, my voice surprisingly calm. Not today. With one final effort, I released all the accumulated energy within me, shattering the black crystal into thousands of fragments. The entire tower began to collapse, and the fissure finally closed with an earth-shattering boom. Before everything disappeared, I saw Nictel being dragged back into the void, his colossal form reduced to a distant shadow. The semigods, including the fragments of my crew, vanished along with him, freed from their prison. And then, I too faded away. When I opened my eyes, there was nothing. No sound, no light, no touch of reality around me. It was like floating in an infinite ocean of darkness where even the concept of self began to unravel. I was merely a solitary consciousness, trapped between worlds, without body or form. Do I still exist? The question echoed in my mind, but there was no answer. There was no one to hear, except the oppressive silence that surrounded me. I vaguely remembered what had happened: the explosion of the black crystal, Nictel's fall into the void, and the collapse of the tower. But those memories felt distant, as if they belonged to someone else. Whoever I had been before, I was now unrecognizable. Perhaps I had died, or perhaps something worse had occurred. Then, I felt something. A soft, almost imperceptible vibration reverberated through the empty space around me. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced, a sensation of presence, but not human. It wasn't Nictel, but something connected to him. A lost fragment. "You shouldn't be here," said a voice. It was neither loud nor soft, yet it carried a weight that pressed on my mind like Annanville. "You broke the rules." I tried to respond, but I had no mouth, no lungs, no vocal cords. My words were thoughts, and even so, they felt too fragile to cross this limbo. I only wanted to stop him, I thought, hoping the entity could hear. He was going to destroy everything. "That doesn't matter," the voice replied, cold and indifferent. "You interfered with something greater than you can comprehend. Now, you are trapped." Suddenly, flashes began to appear around me. Glimpses of other realities, other times. I saw strange alien worlds, advanced civilizations that never existed on Earth, and creatures so vast and incomprehensible that my mind instinctively recoiled from them. They were fragments of alternate universes, shards of possibilities Nictel had touched during his ascension. But then I saw something familiar. It was the Eos, my ship, intact, floating in deep space. Inside it were my crewmates, alive, smiling, as if nothing had happened. They looked happy, oblivious to the horror I had faced. This is an illusion, I thought, trying to resist the temptation. This isn't real. It's as real as anything else, the voice responded. Time isn't linear here. Everything exists simultaneously. I stretched out my hand, or rather, what remained of it, toward the image of the ship. For a moment, I felt the comforting warmth of being back where it had all begun. But then, the scene abruptly shifted. Now, I was somewhere else. Or perhaps the same place, seen from a different angle. Before me stood a diminished version of Nictel, his form still colossal but contained within a limited space. He was trapped, his claws scraping against invisible walls that held him captive. His eyes, or what served as eyes, glowed with hatred as he stared at me. "You think you defeated me?" His voice was thunder shaking the very darkness. "You've only delayed me. I am eternal. I am the void that fills the universe. So why am I here?" I asked, my mental voice trembling with fear. "Why didn't you destroy me?" "Because you are useful," Nictel replied, his presence wrapping around me like a web. "You are an echo, a human fragment trapped in this limbo. As long as you exist, so do I. You are my prison, and Mikey." I felt something latch onto my essence, a force anchoring me to this place. It was Nictel, using what remained of me to maintain a minimal connection to this plane of existence. He hadn't been completely banished. He had found a way to survive through me. "You will be my guardian," he continued, his thoughts echoing like distant thunder, "until someone else comes to free me again." "No," I responded, struggling against the force binding me. I won't let that happen. You have no choice, Nictail said, his voice dripping with scorn. You are no longer human. You are part of me now. As I tried to process what was happening, more fragments began to emerge around me. This time, they were memories of the people I'd encountered on the radioactive planet. The semi-gods who had sacrificed themselves, or been sacrificed, to fuel Nictail's ascension. Their forms appeared briefly, distorted and grotesque, before vanishing once more. Are you here too? I asked, desperate for some connection to another soul. We are everywhere, they responded in unison, their voices forming a dissonant choir. We are fragments of him. And now, so are you. I realized then that I wasn't alone in this limbo. There were thousands, perhaps millions, of other consciousnesses trapped here, all connected to Nictail in some way. Some were human, others entirely alien entities. We were all prisoners of his infinite will. With time, though the concept of time made no sense here, I began to feel a new kind of pressure. It was a call, a pull coming from somewhere beyond this limbo. Nictail was reaching for something, someone, elsewhere. And I could feel his clear intent. He was searching for his next host. Will you help him? I asked the other consciousnesses around me. We have no choice, they replied. Just like you. Knowing I couldn't escape, I decided to use the little control I still had over my mind to send a message. I focused on the images that had appeared earlier, the EOS, my crew, the life I had left behind. Used those memories as a beacon, hoping that someone, somewhere, might find them. Don't come here, I thought, projecting my words out of this limbo. This place isn't safe. He's waiting. He'll always be waiting. The darkness around me was no longer a passive void. It was something active, something hungry. I felt as though I were being watched by billions of invisible eyes, each one assessing, judging, deciding which part of me would be consumed first. Nictail slowly emerged from the limbo, but he was no longer the colossal entity I had faced before. He had changed. His form was now an amorphous, pulsating mass of black, fluid flesh, covered in human eyes that blinked in perfect unison. Each eye belonged to someone he had devoured. Scientists, explorers, children, the elderly. At the center of this abomination was a massive mouth filled with teeth that seemed made of shattered glass, glowing with a cold bluish light. His tentacles were long and thin, ending in claws that appeared capable of tearing through the very fabric of reality. You have failed, he said. But his voice didn't come only from his mouth. It echoed from everywhere at once, as if the sound were made of distorted memories. And now, you will be the final ink. Before I could react, something terrible happened. Nictail was connecting to other minds, not just those of the space explorers or the semi-gods, but all of us. Every living human on Earth was being touched by him, their thoughts invaded by whispers they couldn't comprehend. I could feel their presence, billions of souls silently screaming as they were dragged into the same limbo where I was trapped. But there was something even worse. It wasn't just the living he was reaching. He was connecting to the dead as well. The ghosts of extinct civilizations, the souls of billions who had once lived, all of them were being sucked back into consciousness, transformed into fragments of Nictail. You are the catalyst, he said, extending one of his tentacles toward me. Without you, this would not be possible. That's when I realized something that chilled me to the bone. Nictail wasn't trying to return to our world. He was already here. Everything we had done until now, the explosion of the black crystal, my sacrifice, the collapse of the tower, it had all been a distraction. Nictail didn't need a portal to enter this plane of existence. He was already inside us. You never understood, he said, his voice now a chorus of billions of voices screaming in dissonant harmony. I am not something external. I am the doubt you feel deep in your mind. I am the fear that keeps you awake at night. I am the void you try to fill with empty meanings. Nictail wasn't a separate entity. He was the collective manifestation of our own existential despair, fueled by humanity's relentless search for meaning in an indifferent universe. Our science, our religion, our art. It was all just fuel for him. Nicktail began performing a horrifying ritual, using the newly connected human minds as fuel to strengthen his connection to this plane of existence. I felt something flow through me, a dark, viscous energy, streaming from the souls of billions of people directly into the entity. They screamed in agony as their human identities were ripped away, replaced by fragments of Nicktail. "No!" I mentally screamed, struggling against the force holding me. "Leave them alone!" But Nicktail only laughed, a sound that made space-time itself tremble. "They are already here," he said, his spinning eyes fixing on something beyond me. "They have always been here." Then, something happened, something even Nicktail hadn't anticipated. As he drained the souls of the living and the dead, I noticed his body beginning to deteriorate. His tentacles started dissolving into ash, and his human eyes began to rot and fall out, leaving empty holes in his black flesh. He roared in pain, but it wasn't a sound of rage. It was a sound of confusion. "What is happening?" he asked, his voice now fragile and hesitant. That's when I understood. Nicktail wasn't invincible. He was a parasitic entity, feeding on our emotions and doubts. But there was something he couldn't comprehend. Indifference. When the souls he consumed stopped resisting, stopped fighting, he began to lose his strength. "You cannot control us," I thought, my mental voice calm and cold. "We are no longer human. We are just fragments of the void, just like you." With that realization, something inside me shifted. It stopped fighting, stopped resisting. I let Nicktail consume me completely, offering no resistance. And then, something incredible happened. He began to collapse. His gigantic body dissolved into dust, his tentacles disintegrated into smoke, and his screams were swallowed by silence. But I wasn't free. Instead, I realized that I, too, had become part of him. My body, my mind, my soul, everything had been absorbed by the void. Now, I was just another fragment of Nicktail, wandering the universe, seeking new minds to consume. If anyone finds this message, know that it is already too late. I am no longer Marcus Davis. I am just an echo of the void, a fragment of something far greater and far worse. And if you're reading this, you're probably already part of him too. You cannot escape.